Hello everyone, I am K. Rashmiraj from Triply. Today I am discussing about what is Jupyter Notebook. And the Jupyter Notebook is an open source web application that you can use to create and share documents that contain live code, equations, visualizations, and text. Jupyter Notebook is maintained by the people at Project Jupyter. Jupyter Notebooks are a spin-off project from the IPython project, which used to have a IPython notebook project itself. The name Jupyter comes from the core supported programming languages that is supports Julia, Python, and R. And Jupyter ships with the IPython kernel, which allows you to write your program in Python. But there are currently over 100 other kernels that you can also use. Getting up and running with the Jupyter Notebook. The Jupyter Notebook is not included with Python, so if you want to try it only, you will not need to install. You will need to install Jupyter. There are many distributions of the Python language. The article will focus on just two of them. For the purposes of installing Jupyter Notebook, the most popular is CPython, which is the reference version of Python that you can get from their websites. It is also accused that you are using Python 3 installing. If so, then you can use a handy tool that comes with Python called pipe to install Jupyter Notebook like this. Ash a pipe install Jupyter. The next most powerful distribution of Python is an Anaconda. Anaconda. Anaconda has its own installer tool and called Conda that you could use for installing a third party package. However, Anaconda comes with many scientific libraries pre-installed, including the Jupyter Notebook, so you don't actually need to do anything other than installing Anaconda itself. Starting the Jupyter Notebook server. Now that you have Jupyter installed, let's learn how to use it. To get started, all you need to do is open your terminal application and go to a folder of your choice. I recommended using something like your documents folder to start out with. The create a subfolder. They're called notebooks or something else that is easy to remember. The then just go to the location in terminal and run the following command. So ash Jupyter Notebook and creating a notebook. Now that you know that how to start a notebook server, you should probably learn how to create an actual notebook document. All you need to do is click on new button upper right and it will open up a list of choices. On my mission, I happen to have Python 2 and Python 3 installed, so I can create a notebook that uses either of these. For simplicity sake, let's choose Python 3. Ash Jupyter Untitled. This is the example how we download and how we use this Jupyter notebook. And naming. First, you will notice that at the top of the page is word untitled. This is the title for the page and the name of your notebook. Since that isn't a very descriptive name, let's change it. Just move your mouse over the word untitled and click on the text. You should now see an I in user dialog title rename notebook. Let's rename it one to Hello Jupyter. Rename notebook name is Hello Jupyter. Running cells. A notebook cells defaults to use code whenever you first create one, and that cells use the kernel that you choose when you started your notebook. In this case, you started your with Python 3 as your kernel, so that means you can write Python code in your code cells. Since your initial notebook has only one empty cell in it. The notebook can't really do anything. Thus, to verify that everything is running as it should, you can add some Python code to the cell and try running its contents. Let's try adding the following code to the cell. Print hello Jupyter. Next, this means the means the Jupyter Notebook has several means that you can use to interact with your notebook. The means run along the top of the notebook just like means do in other applications. Here is a list of current means. First, file, next, edit, next, view, next, insert, next, cell, next, kernel, next, widgets, next, help. Let's go over the means one by one. This article won't go into detail or every single option in every menu, but it will focus on the items that are unique to notebook application. Next, the first mean is the file menu. It in it, you can create a notebook or open a pre-existing one. This is also where you would go to rename a notebook. I think the most interesting menu item is the save and checkpoint option. This allows you to create checkpoints that you can roll back to if you need to. Next is the edit menu. Here you can cut, copy and paste cells. Now we are discussing about this file, edit, view, insert cells, a kernel which gets help by point to point, and these are the menus in the Jupyter notebook, and it has several menus except this. And let's go over the means one by one. This article won't go into detail for every single step. Option is every menu, but it will focus on the items that are unique to the notebook application. And next we'll see this running cells completed. The first menu is the file menu. In it, you can create a notebook or open a pre-existing one. This is also where you would go to rename a notebook. I think the most interesting menu item is the save and checkpoint option. This allows you to create checkpoint that you can roll back to if you need to. Next is the edit menu. Here you can cut, copy and paste cells. This is also where you would go if you wanted to delete, split or merge a cell. You can reorder cells here too. First, the main step. In these main steps, first we have to create a new notebook, and next there is also where you would go to rename a notebook. Point. Next, a checkpoint. Next, this allows you to create checkpoints that you can roll back if you need to. Next is the edit menu. Here in the edit menu we can cut, copy, paste cells, and this is also where we would go if you wanted to delete, split or merge a cell. And we also can do cut, copy, paste the cells. You can reorder cells here too. Note that some of the items in this menu are grayed out. The reason for this is that they do not apply the currently selected cell. For example, a code cell cannot have an image inserted into it. A code cell cannot have an image inserted it, but a markdown cell can. If you see a graded out menu item, try changing the cells item and see if the item becomes available to use or not. And next, the view menu is useful. The view menu is useful for toggling the visibility of the header and toolbar. You can also toggle line numbers within cells on or off. This is also where you would go if you want to mess about with the cells toolbar. The insert menu is just for inserting cells above or below the currently selected cell. This cell menu allows you to run one cell, a group of cells, or all the cells. You can also go here to change a cell's type. Although I personally find the toolbars to be more intuitive for that. The other handy feature in this menu is the ability to clear a cell's output if you are planning to share your notebook with others. You will probably want to clear the output first so that the next person can run the cells themselves. Here, first, the insert menu is just for creating or inserting cells above or below the currently selected. And we can copy, cut, or paste the cells, and we also insert the menu for cells and are below our currently selected cell. And next, we have next the kernel cell is for working with the kernel that is running in the background. Here we can reset the kernel, reconnect to it, shut it down, or even change one kernel your notebook is using. And you probably won't be working with the kernel all that often, but there are times when you are debugging a notebook that you will find you need to reset the kernel. If the kernel cell is for working with the kernel that is running in the background, we we can start the kernel, reconnect to it, shut it down, or even change which kernel your notebook is using. Here we can change the kernel notebook, but what that happens is this is where you would go. The widgets menu is for saving and clearing widget state. Widgets are basically JavaScript widgets that you can add to your cells to make a dynamic contact using Python or another kernel. Finally, you have the help menu, which is where you can go to learn about the notebook keyboard, shuts, a user interface store, and lots of reference material. And these are the menus of the Jupyter notebook, and it has several menus that we have discussed in and interact with our notebook. And we go back to the our notebook. Here, once again, I will discuss about getting up and running with Jupyter Notebook. We have discussed the menu points in that notebook, and now how to install and what is the running with the Python. How to getting up and running with the Jupyter Python. The Jupyter Python notebook is not included with Python. We have discussed. So if you want to try to it out, you will need to install Jupyter. How we can install? If so, then you can use a handy tool that comes with Python Jupyter called pipe. We have to use, by using the pipe we can install the Jupyter notebook easily by using the Python 3 and install Jupyter notebooks like pipe install Jupyter. Okay. Next, this Jupyter notebook is most probably is C Python, which is the reference version of Python that you can get from their website. Python, we have lot of websites for Python. In C Python, we can get this website easily, and it is also assumed that we are using this Python 3. Now we are using Python 3 to install this Jupyter Python, and the process is we have to use Python pipe and pipe install Jupyter. Anaconda is also a use to install this Jupyter Python. Next, creating a notebook. Here is an example of Jupyter Python, and like this we have to write the code. And I am concluding my AAT presentation topic. Thanking you. Signing off, Rashmi Raj.